Hello, Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. I've got some beer. I am happily fed. This has been a good night. I'm excited to get into this, and we're going to do a podcast.
All right. Well, before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today, we're going to be discussing chapters 2 and 3 of The Dragon Reborn, where Min and Perrin are sick of feeling stuck, and Rand almost brings down the mountain. Chapter 2 is called Saidin, and the icon is the Dragon Fang.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Ignoring the dragon banner, Leia asks Perrin to show her to Moraine right away. He directs her to Moraine's hut and hands off the horses to some of the men so he can get something to eat, telling them that when they ask that no, he has no idea if they will be leaving soon. Or ever. Min joins him by a cookpot and he asks her what she sees. He immediately regrets it when Min tells him that the Tinker Woman is going to die. She saw a vision of Leia with her face covered in blood. Perrin wants to warn her, but there's nothing to be done about one of Min's visions. Min rants about her visions for a minute, and Perrin snaps at her that he doesn't want to know what she sees about him. They're both on edge, and he's quick to apologize. Loyal joins them, and they talk about getting caught up in tavern pulling. Min complaining about how her life has been disrupted. Loyal views it as good fortune to have fallen in with not one, but 3 tavern, and confesses to his friends that he has decided to write a book about their adventures. There was a stir among the Shenarians, alerting them that Rand was coming out of Moraine's hut. The men greet him, telling him it's an honor to serve the Lord Dragon, and he disappears into the trees. Min mentions that he's been arguing with Moraine all day. Perrin excuses himself to go after Rand. He always needs someone to talk to after his bouts with Moraine. He knew Rand's favorite hiding spot and went directly there. Perrin finds Rand staring at his palms where the heron marks were branded into his skin. He recites the "twice shall he be marked" prophecy to himself, making comments that make him seem unstable. Perrin has a momentary internal panic about being this close to a male channeler, the stuff of nightmares, but can't help but see Rand as his childhood friend. He sits by Rand and waits until he's ready to talk. After a while, Rand asks Perrin if he thinks Mat is okay. Perrin reasons that he must be in Tar Valon by now, and Nynaeve and Egwene would see that he was healed and keep him out of trouble. Perrin wishes that he was still a blacksmith in Emond's Field and asks Rand if he wishes he were still just a shepherd, but Rand starts talking about duty and doesn't answer. Perrin asks about his argument with Moraine. Men sworn to him are dying by the thousands, and he feels that he owes them something, but he admits that Moraine is right. If he goes down and allies himself with one of the scattered groups, the White Cloaks or any number of others would swarm over them and destroy them. But he is so sick of waiting. They all are. Rand dreads his future and feels the pull of Saidin dragging at him until he can't stand it. The ground starts to tremble and it develops into a pretty decent earthquake. Perrin shouts at Rand to stop it a few times before the shaking subsists. Rand tells Perrin that sometimes he can't help himself. Saidin calls to him and is irresistible. Sometimes he reaches out and catches only air, but that time it filled him more than he expected, and he had to direct it somewhere before it burned him up. He didn't mean to do it. Perrin tells him there are plenty of people that want them all dead. He doesn't need to do the work for them. He says that it's late and tells Rand to come down and get something to eat, but Rand wants to be alone for a while. Before he leaves, Rand asks Perrin about his dreams. He says, "They're always there, dreams. Maybe they tell us things, true things." He fell silent, and Perrin leaves him alone.
Leah doesn't waste any time. As soon as she gets into the camp, she ignores the dragon banner and isn't afraid to be in the camp of the dragon at all. She immediately went to see Moraine, and Perrin thinks how it was the same with all the other messengers. Mm-hmm. No one stopped for food or warmth. They went straight to deliver their news to Moraine first.
Yeah. So, in regards to Min, the line, "He did not understand why she insisted on breeches instead of skirts," was obviously the perspective of a man who has had the luxury of wearing pants his whole life.
Huh?
I know some women find dresses or skirts comfortable, but I'll take a pair of jeans any day of the week and twice on Sunday, especially when it comes to period clothing. After wearing Victorian costumes and Renaissance costumes and struggling with corsets and 40 pounds of linen, like I can say definitively that men's clothes are so much easier to manage, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think Min ever wants to pass as a boy. She talks about it in future books, and it's always about comfort. She just wants to be comfortable, and she likes working with horses, so men's clothes make being a stable hand possible, you know? She likes the freedom that wearing men's clothes gives her.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and like it was very recently. I saw some show on Netflix. Can't remember what it was, but like it was the first time I've actually seen women in dividing skirts trying to work with horses. Like this is the whole reason you have that divided skirt. And I'm sitting there like, no, just put on some pants. Like seriously, just put on some pants. It would be so much easier. But you know, it was a frontier era, like period piece. So like American frontier, that women couldn't wear pants. I mean. Heavens no, but I mean...
Yeah. And just, if you think of the mechanics of it, if you think of all of the layers and layers and layers of clothing, like just how heavy it is and how bulky it is and how cumbersome it is, and then you couple that, you know, depending on what period of time you're talking about, with metal hoops or corsets with boning and, you know, high heels, you know, whatever the case may be. Women's clothing is designed for aesthetics. It's not designed for comfort, and it's not designed for movement.
No.
You know, there's countless evidence about historical clothing and how dangerous it was for women and how many women got seriously injured or died just because of their clothes.
Yeah.
Whereas for a man, I mean, men's clothing hasn't changed that much over time, especially in Western society.
True.
It's a little different in, you know, cultures that aren't part of the Western world. But I mean, men have been wearing some form of shirts and pants for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And it's the freedom of movement that allows men to have opportunities that women couldn't have just from a practicality standpoint. A woman's not capable of doing certain activities because of her cumbersome clothing, you know? So with men who just wants to do what she wants, she doesn't want to make a statement. She's not trying to be political. She just wants to work with horses. So she wears men's clothes, not because she feels like a man or wants to pass as a man. She just wears men's clothes because she wants the freedom to make her own choices. Yeah. Which is why it sucks so much that the pattern is dictating her life and she knows how little choice she has, you know? Because all she wants is to be free to make her own choices without falling in with what society deems of her or what anyone thinks of her, you know?
Yeah. You know, I'd read The Wheel of Time a couple times before we met. And it wasn't until we had been together, we were married and you were in that Renaissance group, and we had to actually make your costume. And and it was
That
linen and all that stuff. And I can remember the day that just for giggles, we weighed it. And your entire costume came to like 45 pounds.
Yeah.
And mine came to like 5.
Yeah.
Like it was.
Well, it's because it was 2 gigantic skirts and the corset, which has all the metal boning in it and all of that stuff. Like it was a lot.
And that was the Southern California Renaissance Fair, which takes place in a rock quarry that's 110 degrees in the summer. And like all these women are running around wearing 45, 50 pounds of linen. And those poor women who were in the actual like noble outfits were
all the velvets, yeah.
Because they had hoop skirts and you didn't have the hoop skirts. Like you just had 2 skirts. Like, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, like I'm reading through this and I'm like, Perrin, you have no idea what you're talking about here, man.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's true. Like, I don't think Perrin gets it. I know we said this a lot in the last season, but it really sucks to be Min. Like, when I read the line, all the happy things seem to have gone away, I can't help but think about how much further Min has to go.
Yeah.
And Min survives the series, seeing everything that she had viewed come to true in one way or another. She does eventually come to peace with, to a place of acceptance, But at this point in the story, she's got a long way to go for it.
Yeah, she does.
The thing I like about reading a Perrin point of view is that because he is the thinker of the group, the exposition feels more natural and organic because he would be musing and brooding about everything going on around him. We get caught up on the basic scene setting writing stuff, but it's executed in a way that it doesn't feel forced in any way. There's a kind of fluidity to the way that he thinks about something while talking about another that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, totally. So Min's really struggling with her fate in the beginning of this book.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this at the end of The Great Hunt, but she resents how the pattern plucked her out of her chosen life and mixed her up with all this Tavern mess. And she's still not 100% sold on Rand. She knows she has no choice and that it's useless to fight against it, but she just resents the hell out of it. And for good reason, you know? Loyal can see it as a grand adventure because he thinks he's choosing to follow his friends. But Min knows how little choice they really have. Ultimately, she does have a mature take on this whole thing, but in this chapter, she's venting, and deservedly so.
Yeah. You know, it's adorable the way Loyal wants to write a book.
It is.
Like something occurred to me this time reading through. He holds his book so dearly. Mm-hmm. Like we poked a little bit of fun at him in the last season about it, but he really does cherish books.
Yeah.
He spent hours studying them in the steading, and it was the things that he learned about in the books that spurred him to run away and experience the world that he read about.
Mm-hmm.
He holds them so sacred that it might seem a little bit presumptuous to try to write his own book. This could be why he is really humble about and he's kind of bashful when he talks about writing his book.
Yeah.
He does not see himself as worthy, and it's a really great window into what kind of a person he is.
It is super, super cute.
I think Min hands Loyal the best excuse for leaving the steading, and I'm surprised that he doesn't use it. The Tavern made me do it. And it's not even a lie.
True, absolutely.
Perrin can be prickly at times, but he is a good friend.
He really is.
Rand is the thing children have been taught to fear and is destined to go insane. But Perrin knows Rand needs his friend right now because he's getting more isolated.
Yeah.
Rand is surrounded by people who worship him, and the people who typically keep him grounded are all gone, except for one.
Mm-hmm.
Perrin is there for him when no one else can be, and in a way, no one else is able to be, at least for now. Later, Min becomes that person for Rand, but Perrin's all he got.
Yeah, and it's really important because you're right. Like, we're already seeing the Shenarians. You know, they don't see him as Rand anymore. They see him as the Lord Dragon.
Right.
And they are just following in line with whatever, and no one is there to keep him grounded and remind him of who he is except Perrin, because Perrin grew up with him. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's Moraine, but they butt heads so much that Moraine can't be that person for him.
Yeah.
Because they just argue constantly. And he's sure that she's trying to use him. And so she'll never be that for him. Like, he needs someone who really, really knows him. Like, knew him before.
Yep.
Knew who he was raised to be. Like, who he grew up to be. Like, you know, who he was as he was forming, you know?
Right.
And there's no one else. Like, everyone else is gone and they're in Tarvalon or wherever, you know?
Yep.
We spent all of the Great Hunt with Rand ignoring or denying his destiny. Now, in The Dragon Reborn, we will see Rand grapple with what his destiny means.
Yeah.
He has to figure out how to come to terms with the fact that he's prophesied to fight the Dark One at the last battle and probably die. I can't even imagine what kind of a head trip it would be to realize that there are prophecies written about you. Like, how do you accept that you are the stuff of legends? It's a lot to take. And the prophecies are all doom and gloom, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Rand is convinced that he's supposed to die in order to save the world. He's a young man, and that's an enormous amount of pressure, you know? Like, I give Rand a hard time sometimes because he can be such an idiot.
Well, he can be.
And he makes such bad choices. But this is a lot to have on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of season 1 of Buffy in Prophecy Girl. Spoilers. When she learns about the prophecy that the master is going to kill her and she wants to quit. Like, she tells Giles, I'm 16 years old. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And Rand's in a similar boat, you know? Like, it makes sense that he spends so much of this book bug nuts crazy. It's a lot to process.
It really is.
You know?
And how do you prep someone to process that? Like,
You can't. Like, it's impossible. You know? It's a lot. So, like, we've talked about how Rand's crazy dials up to 11 in this book, and then afterwards it dials back down, and, you know, like, kind of look at it as an inconsistency. But giving Jordan the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's not. You know, maybe it's just Rand lost it for a while he was trying to process being the dragon.
I can see that. Like, he needed to be able to work through the shock of it before he could actually start to process it.
Yeah, the shock and the denial and the anger and the hopelessness and you know, all of this stuff that we see here. It really knocks him for a loop for a while.
It really does.
But eventually he finds a way to start to cope with it. And once he figures out how to cope, like once he gets some tools in his box, so to speak, he gets more normal. He's less off his rocker. I mean, he's still a little crazy, but he's not as unstable and kind of scary as he can be in this book.
Yeah, and he does get really unstable later on, but you're right. He does have that bit of a peak here, and then he lulls out for a little bit in the next couple of books, and then it gets really crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, how much power he's using affects his mental state. But really here, I think it's less he's going crazy from the Dark One and the taints and everything. And he's a little crazy because this is so much to work with. He's so overwhelmed. He doesn't know how to process it. And he's just convinced he's going to die. And that's a lot for a 20-year-old to handle.
It really is.
You know, like his brain's not even finished baking yet. And he has the weight of the world literally on his shoulders, you know?
Yeah, and he hasn't even, you know, like...
He barely can shave at this point, you know? It's a lot. So...
We saw the lording of Rand in the last book, and Rand has started to learn what it means to have people follow you that you need to look after. Mm-hmm. Now, the lesson continues. Sometimes the leader has to let bad things happen to the people who have pledged to them. Mm-hmm. Rand wants to go and help the people dying on the Ammoth Plain that have declared him the dragon, but he lacks the resources to do it at this time, so he has to stay put.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that he's totally trying to assert his independence from Moraine, and he's not listening to reason. But this is a lesson that he must learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And he certainly does use it, or does learn it.
He does, definitely, later on. The first time I read this, I was convinced that Rand was already insane. Like, I thought that he was going to become the bad guy, and eventually Matt and Perrin were going to have to put him down for the benefit of the world.
That would have been a very different book.
A very different,
an interesting book. Like, I would read that book, but no, that's not it.
But now, when I read about the earthquake, it just highlights how much Rand needs a teacher to show him how to control Saidin. And maybe his emotions in the process?
Yeah. That would be nice. Learning how to control himself might help him learn how to control his power.
Maybe. But I do laugh every time I get to the end of this chapter. Perrin's solution to lift Rand's spirits is, let's go eat. I know it's an oversimplification of the situation, but it still makes me laugh.
Yeah, absolutely.
That wraps up Chapter 2. But before we get to Chapter 3, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by a PSA about earthquake preparedness. You never know when the big one is going to hit, especially when you hang out with wily magic users. So it's smart to keep a few helpful tips in mind. When an earthquake hits, stop, drop, and roll.
Wait.
What?
That's not an earthquake. That's for when you're on fire.
Oh, yeah. Okay, how about this? Stop, wait a minute, fill my cup, put some liquor in it?
That's not an earthquake either. That's a Marsquake. a Bruto Marsquake.
And we're done. This has been a PSA. Honestly, y'all, earthquakes aren't that bad.
Chapter 3 is called News from the Plain, and the icon is the wheel.
Perrin can feel the wolves trying to talk to him, but he shuts it down. Moraine is pissed, and Perrin tries to explain that the earthquake was an accident. Rand didn't mean to. She stalks back into her hut in a huff, and Perrin expects she and Rand will be arguing again before long. Min is also pretty mad about Rand's little stunt. There was minimal damage, and everyone got shaken about, but beyond some bruises, no one was hurt. The Shenarians take everything the Lord Dragon does in stride, but Min wants to thump Rand good and proper. Perrin suggests that she leave for her own safety, offering her money to help get back home to Berlin. She tells him in her own way that she can't leave, which he doesn't understand, but she appreciates his kindness. Moraine comes over and Min asks if Leia is okay. Moraine tells him that she split her scalp during the earthquake and bled a lot before Moraine was able to heal her. She's resting, but she's fine. Min is confused and a little disturbed, confident that her vision meant that Leia was going to die. Moraine agrees that she has never been wrong before, but who knows what the pattern holds, and Perrin is disgusted by her callousness. Moraine tells him that this is war, Peacock, and the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, yada, yada, yada. Lan, Uno, and Loyal join them by the fire, and they talk about news from the plain. War, white cloaks, and introducing the next level of shadow spawn, the Soulless, a.k.a. Greymen. 3 men who were tall with light eyes have been killed in super sneaky ways. So the plan is to keep waiting. But Moraine feels something in the air and tells them to keep a careful watch and for Lan to stay close. Sleep well! Grumbling, Perrin tries to take her advice, and despite his best efforts to ward against them, he starts to dream.
Knowing what causes the itch in the back of Perrin's head just makes me mad that he resisted the wolves for this long.
Right?
Perrin would have known the Trollocs were gathering if he had just listened. Talk about a great early warning system. It will take a while for Perrin to figure out his relationship with the wolves, and I just wish he'd gotten there sooner.
Seriously, yeah. I love that Perrin immediately starts making excuses for Rand before Moraine says a word. He didn't mean to. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. And both Moraine and Min are like, oh, hell no. I'm going to thump that boy.
Replace Moraine for Nynaeve and...
Right? Yeah.
We're back in the Two Rivers. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, Nynaeve and Egwene instead of Moraine and Min.
Yep. Perrin is a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
But he's also really dense.
Yeah.
Especially in these first few books. Like, offering to help Min leave is a cool thing to do.
Yes.
However, he totally misses the point of Min's story. But we do get one of the more quotable lines in the series here that I really like. Just because fate has chosen something for you doesn't mean it has to be bad.
Good quote.
It really underlines Min's struggle for the next few books, and it begs a whole bunch of questions about destiny and the nature of good and evil, none of which we have time to go into now. But Jordan will keep coming back to this.
Mm-hmm. And it's adorable when she gives him a kiss on the cheek and tells him that he doesn't understand anything. Come to think about it, Perrin has really tender friendships with women in the ways that the other boys don't. Like, I'm pretty sure he has a very similar moment with Egwene.
Yes, he does.
He can be very sweet and very kind.
Yeah. When Perrin makes the comment under his breath about maybe never going home again, Min gives him a look of sympathy and agreement. Mm-hmm. I read this as her feeling sad for him because she knows that when he does go back home, it will be because the pattern makes it so. It will be because the path the pattern has laid out it's a need for him to lead the battle, rather than simply because Perrin chooses to go. Perrin, like Min, is locked into the destiny of the pattern is weaving for them. Am I reading too much into this?
There's a part of that, definitely. But I think what it means is that when Perrin wants to go home, he doesn't mean just that he wants to go back to the Two Rivers. He wants to go back to the way things were before they left. But that version of home doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
He has changed too much. He's not the same person he was before. And how he looks at the world is completely different. And he's not the only one that's changed.
Right.
He doesn't know it yet, but Emond's Field isn't the same place as it was before he left. Perrin can't go home again. Not because he can't return to Emond's Field, but because everything is so different now. That home will never feel the same way ever again.
Yeah.
And Min is really perceptive, and her visions give her a certain wisdom, so she knows all this. So I think that's what the look means.
That makes sense. Moving on to happier things. How do I get one of those water cloaks?
Right?
Like, the description of Lan walking through the camp in the twilight is just awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So Perrin gets pretty judgy of Moraine when they're talking about Min's confidence that her vision means Leia is going to die. He thinks, I won't let a death matter that little to me, and I will never accept it the way you do. The thing is, though, that it's not that Moraine doesn't care. She's lived enough to understand that there are some things in her control and other things that she can't do anything about.
True.
And as much as she may wish things were different, it is what it is. Perrin is still young, but he will learn all too soon that he can't save everybody, and trying to do so may do more damage than not.
Yeah. I like that Moraine reminds Perrin that there are more than one kind of weapon that can be used in a war. Just because Leia will not take up arms doesn't mean that she can't be part of the fight.
Yeah.
She's doing her part the best way that she is able to.
Yeah, and more importantly, that Leia chose to be part of the fight against the Shadow.
Right.
Like, Perrin sees her as an innocent, helpless victim to fate, but that is stripping her of all of her agency. Whatever her reasons, Leia knew what she was getting into and chose to deliver news to Moraine.
Yep.
The Tinkers aren't blind to the world around them. They are well aware of the dangers that surround them and how violent men can be. They don't follow the way of the leaf out of ignorance. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. Leia would have known that she could easily die on this trip up the mountain, but she chose to do it anyway. And Perrin should remember that she did not smell afraid.
That's very true. I love this description of Lan. It was not that he seemed merely capable of violence and death. This man tamed violence and death and kept them in his pocket, ready to loose in a heartbeat or embrace should Moraine give the word. Can you get any more epic than that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So good.
One downside to the way the prologue of this book plays out is that there's no real mystery as to why the White Cloaks are behaving the way they are on Amma's Plain.
Yeah.
Now, give us the reasons. So, watching the team ponder over why Leia's report doesn't depict normal behavior is just a little boring for me. Mm-hmm. It's like watching a TV show where you see the crime committed in the first few minutes and then watch the cops try to figure out for the whole episode. Mm-hmm. Yes, it will be interesting to see how things unfold, but watching people talk about it gets old fast.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Definitely. But we get introduced to the Soulless,
Yes,
or
we do.
Gray Men. Our heroes are leveling up, so it only makes sense that the bad guys will too. Trollocs are easy peasy lemon squeezy these days, so we got to keep raising the bad guy bar to keep it challenging.
Because when you go through a video game, you got to level up.
Exactly, level 1 Bowsers.
Perrin and I have the same reaction to Moraine's sleep well comment. We just talked about the Soulless and how Rand's stunt with the power probably lit a beacon for the Fades to find them, and both Moraine and Perrin sense something is outside the camp waiting to pounce. Sweet dreams are not made of this, but who am I to disagree? That's it for chapters 2 and 3 of The Dragon Reborn. Join us next week for chapters 4 and 5, where Perrin's dreams have some unwelcome visitors and Trollocs come to party.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so people can find us. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Or find our Wheel of Time Pod-Thru channel on YouTube. Join the 3 subscribers. Hey, it's new. Thanks, everybody. And we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.